welcome to our last Feature Friday of this Feature Friday series. My name is Caitlin Adams. I am an Intacct consultant here at Micro Accounting, and I am going to be going over vendor approvals today. Just a reminder that these little Feature Fridays are little mini webinars, just a little mini training. It's going to be about 15 minutes long. And on just features that are available in Intacct that could be useful to implement that you might not be using right now. We do have monthly webinars that are a little bit longer, about 30 minutes each month. So keep an eye on your email to see what is upcoming for the month of April and beyond for those webinars. So now that I have said all of that, let's get started on vendor approvals. All right, let me share my screen. Let me see. Hopefully this is working. All right, there we go. Okay, I do have that pulled up. So vendor approvals, what they are is this is a single level approval structure where you can assign permissions to one approver or even a group of approvers. And all it does is add a little bit control to your vendor creation and update workflows. So what this means is that whenever you make a change to a vendor or add a new vendor, that vendor is going to go into an approval queue. If you have a pool of approvers, so more than one vendor approver, then any of those approvers will have access to approve that vendor. So while it's very important to note that while a vendor is in a queue to get approved, or if that vendor is declined. So on this list view right here that you're looking at, you can see that the state of this vendor is submitted, and then the state of this vendor is declined. These users cannot post AP or purchasing transactions to that vendor. They cannot edit existing transactions for that vendor, and they cannot select transactions for payment. So you need to make sure that you are staying on top of your vendor approval queue. We do have ways to add that queue to dashboards for easier access, but just to make note that you cannot post anything or edit transactions or even mark or even pay transactions whenever they are in that approval queue. I also want to make a note that vendors cannot be edited while a payment is in process. So you, and this is just system-wide, whether or not you have vendor approvals turned on or not, but you are not able to edit that vendor if you have a bill that has a payment that is selected for payment but has not been, like the check has not been cut yet. So I wanted to show you first how we can track changes for vendor approval. So again, whoops, I went to this this list view. Here you can see the state of a vendor. If it is approved, that vendor is good to go. You can create transactions against that vendor, whether it's a AP transaction, purchasing, or a payment transaction. And then you can see if they are submitted. So this means that there has been a change to this vendor, or maybe it is a new vendor and it is awaiting approval. And then declined, of course, means that a change was made to this vendor, but that change was declined and something needs to be updated here. So we can take a look at the state field on this list view here. What we can also do is, if I go to Citibank here, to this vendor, I can track the changes on the vendor history tab. So you can see that we added this vendor prior to turning on vendor approval. So whenever I turn on vendor approvals, you will see that the system is going to go ahead and approve that vendor. you will see that the submitter is the person that turned on vendor approvals for that system, but you will see that the configuration was enabled. And moving forward, if I made any changes to this vendor and those did get approved here, you would see that on the history tab. Another place to view changes to your vendors are on the audit trail. So here is where I can see that this vendor was added to the system. And then you can see where, changes were made. There was no audited change, but it was approved again. So you can see any changes that are made at the audit trail as well. I do want to point out that whenever you are submitting vendor 1099 transaction updates by the import, so this is completely not related to adding a new vendor or editing a vendor, but the import for vendor 1099 transaction updates, these are not supported by vendor approvals. So you are able to make that import and it will not go through the approval process. Another thing I wanted to point out is that if you are a vendor approver, you cannot submit or you cannot approve your own changes to vendors or your own additions. So you can see right here that I am Caitlin Adams, but since I can't approve my own vendors, I had to sign in as another person in this environment. So down here, I can see that I have a submitted state for the micro accounting vendor. If Emma is an approver, so if I go to approve vendors, I do not see that micro accounting is in my approval queue. And that is because if I go to the micro accounting vendor, you can see that Emma is the person that created this vendor. So upon her creating the vendor, she is unable to approve it. There needs to be another approver in the system. And if the person that is approving vendors is also going to be making changes to vendors. So I just wanted to point that out as well. Whenever you turn on vendor approval in your AP configuration, this is something that we can do for you, or if you have the proper permissions within your system, you're an administrator, you can go to your AP configuration and turn it on yourself. It will take a moment for the system to go through and approve all of your vendors that already exist in your system. Whenever that happens, you will receive an email from the system that looks like this, and it just says, hi, the process to approve your vendors is completed successfully. Now you can create and update your vendors. You cannot make any changes during that time frame. It does not take very long, but depending on the number of vendors in your system, it might take a little bit longer. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that you're not able to edit or create vendors while those things are occurring whenever we do turn on the vendor configuration. So that might be, if you want to turn it on, it might be something you want to do at the end of the day to let that that system approval happen for all the existing vendors, and then the next morning they should be good to go. I also wanted to point out here that in your preferences, you are able to set up notifications for your vendor or for vendor approvals. So if you are a approver in the system, you can choose to get your payment request emailed to you. If you are waiting on approvals, you can also get notifications whenever that vendor is approved. So under your personal settings, you can set up those email notifications. Again, I highly suggest maybe adding your approval queue to your dashboard if you are an approver. That way you can keep an eye on those throughout the day and get those approved quickly so that your AP team or your purchasing team can take advantage of creating transactions for those vendors. All right, so the next thing I want to do is show you how this works. So I am in here and I'm back as myself. I am Caitlin and I do not have vendor approvals set up. I do not have the permissions to do that. So I realized that I made an edit to a vendor. I also did receive an email that says, hey, this vendor got declined. So I need to go see what happened and what I made. So I believe that what happened whenever I was setting up this vendor is that I did not have the type ID correctly. So I needed to change this to general trade. I will go to submit. And once this update is submitted, I am now Emma in my system. Emma is a vendor approver. So I will go to accounts payable and go to approve vendors. And here is where I can view the request that I submitted. I can go check and make sure that that type ID is correct. Maybe I'm making sure that we have a W-9 attached, something like that. And whenever I approve this, I am able to put in comments here. You can put it a nice message, or if you are declining it, you can also allow them to know why you are declining that vendor. And then you can hit approve. And there you go. So now I am able to go to, if I refresh this screen, you'll see that that vendor is now approved. If I go to that vendor, on the history here, I can see where there was a change made and Emma declined it because it was the wrong type. And now she gave me a nice message approving it, saying that it looks great. So that is really it for vendor approvals. They're very, very easy, but again, a very good way to add some controls to your vendor creation and even updates to vendors, making sure that you don't have duplicate vendors in the system, making sure that your W-9s are attached for your 1099able vendors, that sort of thing, making sure that addresses are typed in correctly, all of that type of stuff. So it's a great feature that got added, gosh, it must have been a couple of years ago now, but something that can really be utilized in your workflow.